All right, everyone, welcome to this special edition of Ask Anthony. You know, I get so many emails and phone calls from a lot of you with problems that you just can't solve. And unfortunately, I can't always get to all of them and put them on television or maybe come out and do a story with you. But I want to do something a little different, do something weekly where I can try to answer some of your questions. And a lot of questions that I receive weekly, a lot of you want legal advice. So I thought it would be a good idea to actually bring in a local attorney to address some of those concerns you may have. So right now I want to introduce Adam Thoresen. He is an attorney with Jack's Legal Aid. Adam, thank you for being here with us today. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, not a problem, Anthony. So my name's Adam Thoresen. I work with Jacksonville Area Legal Aid. I've been there about 16 years now and work downtown. I've also worked in our St. Augustine office. But the important thing about what I do is I exclusively represent consumers and tenants. So, you know, a lot of attorneys out there in the private bar, maybe they represent businesses, maybe they represent landlords, but I'm a member of the National Association of Consumer Advocates. And that's maybe a good tip for your viewers out there. If you're looking for an attorney and you have a consumer issue, if you go to the National Association of Consumer Advocates website, they can get you to attorneys like me that only represent consumers or tenants.
Perfect. Adam, thank you so much for being here. And I do want to let you know, if you have any questions, feel free to email me at askanthony@firstcoastnews.com, and I will try to get those questions answered for you. So we want to start today with a topic that I get a lot. That's contractors. Let's say you've hired a contractor to do work at your business or at your home. You've paid a lot of money, but then they don't finish the work or they're nowhere to be found. This is an issue I deal with a lot. In fact, let's take a look at a story I did recently concerning this issue. What is this room supposed to be?
This is going to be our new living room.
When I first met the Holders at their home on Jacksonville's south side, there were walls and even a roof, but this room was nowhere near being finished.
There's nothing to it.
Yeah, this is supposed to be a place you could enjoy, but now it's just frustration.
Yeah, exactly.
Doug and Katie signed a contract on November 30th of 2022 with CG Consulting and Design in Jacksonville to make additions to their home and remodel their kitchen. These are renderings of what they were expecting their new space to look like. What was the timeline to finish everything?
Initially he said 6 to 8 weeks, but we knew that wasn't realistic, but we never knew it would be 2 years.
Yeah, you didn't think you'd be waiting 2 years to finish everything. They spoke with a man named Kerry Grimm, who is listed as the company representative on the contract. According to state records, Grimm's wife, Meredith, is the CEO of CG Consulting and Design. In October of 2016, Kerry Grimm, operating under a different business name, was arrested on charges of grand theft after his customers say he accepted thousands of dollars for work that was never completed.
He basically told us everything we wanted to hear.
But the Holders say those words soon turned into empty promises. And how much have you paid so far?
I've got about $160,000 already given to him from the beginning of the project to basically having the entire project paid off.
And has $160,000 worth of work been done?
Absolutely not.
I called CG to get some answers.
CG Consulting and Design.
Hello, my name is Anthony Austin with First Coast News. How are you today? After I made that phone call, the Holders say representatives were at their home the next day.
We had a whole crew going over the next steps of the project, what we were planning, what we wanted done, some feedback, and the day after that, they have been here every day.
In a statement, a CG representative said, quote, CG Consulting and Design is committed to finishing the Holders project as quickly and efficiently as they can. The completion and start of their project has been slow due to the availability of quality craftsmen, permitting, and them having third-party entities that they don't have complete control over. CG Consulting and Design completes close to 500 jobs a year.
We've had way more communication on a daily basis ever since. Lit a fire under them, got them realizing, okay, this is serious. It's like, we don't want to mess with Anthony. Like, we definitely don't want to mess with Anthony. So, I mean, it's been great. Like, we're very pleased.
We're happy that it did have a resolution and that the contractor did come through to finish the work. And as far as I know right now, everything is working out well for that couple. So Adam, I want to ask you this question for all of our viewers. What should you do if you've paid a contractor for work that is not being completed?
Right. This is a great question. I'm glad you've brought it up today. Since the time I've been at Legal Aid doing this kind of work, probably the largest uptick in complaints or concerns I've seen from my clients and consumers in general is issues dealing with contractors. So if there's one thing that I would want the viewers to take away today, it's number one, do your homework first. A lot of the preventative measures you can take to protect yourself as a consumer starts with things like verifying that the person that you're hiring has the proper licensing, and you can do most of that online through the state of Florida. Number two would be do your research. Information is power for a consumer. Make sure that you're looking at reviews, Better Business complaints, maybe even talking to former customers that have used this contractor before. And if you do those things, make sure you understand the contracts you're signing, maybe you can head off problems before they start. Unfortunately, it doesn't always work out that way. You can do your diligence, you can verify licenses, and sometimes you find yourself in this situation. So one of the important things I think consumers can do is start a complaint with the Department of Business and Professional Regulation. That is basically the Florida government entity that regulates and licenses contractors. If you lodge a complaint with them, they can start an investigation. They could reach out to that contractor, get some sort of response in writing, and because they control the ability to perhaps suspend that contractor's license or even look into whether criminal acts have occurred, sometimes that complaint can get the ball rolling if you paid money and work is not progressing. On top of that, I guess another tip is make sure the contract, and you can try to negotiate this in, or maybe it's in a lot of the form contracts that these businesses are using, make progress payments. You don't want to find yourself in the situation where you've paid a ton of money up front, you've paid for all the work up front, because now you've lost that leverage. If you negotiate, hey, I can give you 1/3 now, we get through 1/3 of the project, then we make another 1/3 distribution after you've completed that, making those progress payments is also a way that consumers can help protect themselves if they find themselves in this situation.
All right, that is some excellent advice. I appreciate you for answering that first question, Adam. Something I know that Adam gets a lot of questions about this. I get emails daily. For a lot of you who may rent a home or an apartment, you might be having an issue with your landlord. It might be the living conditions or maybe repairs that you need. They're not being completed in a timely manner. This is something, like I just mentioned, I deal with often. And I did a story not too long ago at a local apartment complex with some tenants who were not happy with their living conditions. In fact, they were dealing with roofs that had collapsed at their apartments. Let's take a look at that story. Tell us a little bit about what happened at your apartment.
Well, I was just in my bedroom cleaning up or basically doing what I normally do. And just knowing my roof just fell on me. It fell on me.
On July 28th, Anthonicia Mitchell says she was in her bedroom when the ceiling collapsed. Her daughter called 911.
They came in, she went to the office, got the ladies, both the ladies from up there to the rent office and say, hey, I think you need to come see this.
Mitchell says she's lived at the University Plaza Apartments near UF Health Hospital for less than a year. For the past 3 weeks, she's been living in a hotel room with her daughter without most of their belongings, and she doesn't know when they'll be able to return home. And what has it been like for you?
Well, it don't feel like it's my home, but I'm here by the grace of God.
In that same apartment complex, video from another neighbor, Amanda Nobles, shows her bathroom flooding. She says human feces backed up into her shower and started flowing into the kitchen.
It started just overflowing from out of the drain, and it wouldn't stop. We tried to use a mop and some towels to plug it, and when we did, it would start coming up out of the the sinks, both sinks, kitchen and bathroom.
For 5 years, she's lived in this apartment. On top of the plumbing problem, for 6 months, she didn't have a working stove.
It's pretty much like, oh, you're here, you're living in this apartment, deal with it. You know, it's sad.
The single mother of 2 says her ceiling collapsed over the bed where her children sleep, and she's thankful they were at school when it happened.
Do your kids ever say anything when they're seeing like backups like that having to happen? When you have a flooding bathroom and
Wasn't expecting you to ask me that.
That question brought Nobles to tears as she thought about the responses to living in what most people would describe as horrible conditions.
That hit me like a ton of bricks. Yes, they do. They always say, "Mommy, I wish we didn't have to live here." But, you know, I reassure my kids that, you know, even though we're going through this, we're just lucky to have somewhere to lay our head.
Her response motivated me to walk across the street to the leasing office to get answers. But the door was locked and no one answered.
see it says their office hours is 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., but no one's here.
I contacted the city of Jacksonville about the living conditions at these apartments. I received a response from the Code Compliance Office that there are currently 16 total active cases at this complex. 8 warning citations have been issued, along with $260 in total fines. Right now, 5 apartment units have been condemned by Code Compliance officers.
What would you like to be done?
I want them to shut it down.
University Plaza is currently owned by a group called Apartment Management Consultants, LLC, that is based in Salt Lake City, Utah. According to their website, they own about 9 properties in Jacksonville. The apartment managers have not responded to my calls or emails, but according to the city, a regional manager for the owner told them they are actively working on permits for roof replacements on buildings 3 and 4, and that they had a contract with roofers. Last Friday, September 6th, Code Compliance officers were told by the regional manager that they will also work on re-roofing buildings 15 and 31.
Everyone deserves a decent place to live, no matter your income level.
Exactly.
And do you feel like maybe, you know, because this would be considered low-income housing, that you're treated differently?
Yes, I think so, yes.
So, a horrible situation that they were having to deal with there at that apartment complex. We're still working with them on trying to get that issue resolved. I can tell you the city did send, as you saw in those stories there, the issues that they were having with that apartment complex and what they were trying to do to get the matter resolved as well. So, Adam, as we talked about, this is a question I get a lot. What is the best way to handle disputes with a landlord if you feel you're living in unsafe conditions?
Right. So this is an issue as a legal services attorney that is near and dear to my heart. So I agree with what was said in the story. I think if you're there every month, you're paying your rent, the landlord needs to do their part and maintain that dwelling unit. And so the good news for tenants is that Florida's residential landlord and tenant law, that's Chapter 83 of the Florida statutes, it talks about what the landlord's duties are. I think the number one tip that I would give is right there in the news story. I think you absolutely, if you're a tenant faced with this situation, you need to call Code Compliance. And I believe that number is 630-CITY, CITY. And you want to have them come out and you want to have them document, inspect the premises, and see if there are violations. And the reason this is so important is that there's parts of the residential landlord tenant code that allow the tenant to, in certain circumstances, if violations are found, and those violations are serious and material violations of the law or the lease, the tenant can withhold their rent to try and coerce the landlord into making those repairs. And the tenant might even be able to break their lease if they want to move somewhere else. And having that code compliance report finding violations, that makes the process of being able to legally withhold your rent much easier, because what you need to do, if you're the tenant, you actually have to give your landlord written notice. So that's very, very important. You need to give your landlord written notice. You need to tell them what needs to be repaired, And you can even just attach maybe a copy of that code citation report that the city will give you and also deliver to your landlord and put that landlord on notice of the repairs that need to be made. So for me as a consumer lawyer, landlord, or a tenant lawyer, those are the two biggest tips. One, involve code compliance. Two, communicate with your landlord in writing so that there's a clear paper trail if this thing ever does make its way to court. Because sometimes, unfortunately, that's what has to happen. You may have to go ask a judge to enforce your rights.
And Adam, I think that was something very important that you mentioned, a paper trail. It's so important to document everything if you need to go to court. Correct.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It's, I often tell people when I'm doing consultations with them, unfortunately with the law, it's not necessarily what happened, it's what you can prove happened. And if you protect yourself by communicating with your landlord in writing, that goes a long way. And, I don't want the viewers to be confused. It doesn't have to be super formal all the time. That can be as simple as making sure you're documenting it through an online portal, if that's the way you're supposed to put in maintenance requests. It could be things like text messages, emails, and of course, you could do old-fashioned letters. But if you do send a letter, you may want to save some sort of proof that you actually mailed it, and you're going to want to save a copy of that letter yourself in case the landlord, loses it.
Adam, I do want to get to one quick question here. Linda, she submitted this question. See if you can answer it here. Her question is, if a neighbor's chained link fence is on her property line, they install a vinyl fence in front of it, can I remove the chain link fence? And I guess this is a question because I get a lot of questions sometimes when it comes to property lines and when it comes to what's my neighbor's, what's mine, whether it's about trees or even fences.
Right. And look, disputes with neighbors can be a thorny issue. And so I think my first recommendation is obviously see if you can talk it out with that neighbor. Again, have that conversation, maybe put something in writing. Say, hey, I believe that you're encroaching on my property. Here's what I intend to do about it. Let's go ahead and have a conversation like that because oftentimes if you open up those chains of communication, maybe some sort of reasonable resolution can be reached. In the absence of that, again, I think I'm a lawyer. I need to be cautious about giving advice online. You may want to make sure that you have some sort of a survey done of the property. And that actually may help you with your conversations with the neighbor because what you believe to be the property lines and demarcations, even if it's been years and years with both neighbors treating it that way, maybe that's the wrong property line. Stakes get moved, mistakes get made. So you may actually have to have somebody come out, survey that property, confirm where the property lines are. And then that's sort of a natural segue again into having that conversation with the neighbor. Hey, I paid someone to come out and survey this. We're seeing that this fence is on my property line. Here's why we have an issue. We need to get that moved.
All right, some good advice. Thank you, Adam. So Adam and I, we were talking about a certain situation. This was actually one of the first stories that I did when I started the Ask Anthony segment, door-to-door salespeople. So the first story I ever did with Ask Anthony involved someone who actually bought some solar panels. Those solar panels stopped working and they couldn't get anyone on the phone. They thought they had a warranty for those solar panels. They actually didn't. It was not valid. And this was all due to someone just knocking on their front door and selling them solar panels. And I also deal with issues when it comes to door-to-door salespeople who are selling new roofs or even mold remediation, whatever it may be. So I want to ask this question to you, Adam. When it comes to situations like this, if you've purchased a product from a salesperson who showed up at your door and the product or a final price is not as promised, what are your legal rights?
Great question. The good news is door-to-door sales in particular, there are some interesting laws that may help consumers in that situation. Number one, Florida has what's called the Home Solicitation Act. And something I get asked about constantly as a lawyer is, hey, I heard if I sign this contract, I get a certain amount of days I can change my mind and get out of it scot-free. And I hate to tell the viewers, but generally speaking, that is not the case. When you sign a contract, whether it's to purchase a car or for anything else, generally speaking, the second you sign that, you are now bound. Where the good exception comes in is for these home solicitation sales. You actually have 3 business days until midnight on the 3rd business day where you can cancel that contract. If you cancel that contract, whatever it is you've purchased, the seller has to come, get those goods back and refund your money. So that is a really good tip for consumers. And kind of the second part of that, and advice goes back to what we talked about at the top of the segment. Doing your homework is so important, and doing your research is so important. In these door-to-door sales, often you're not taking enough time as a consumer to really do your research. They're going to maybe be saying there's incentives, act today, there's tax rebates, we need to do this now, and there's going to be some pressure there that you might feel as a consumer. And I would say, take a beat, step back. Don't sign anything that day. Talk to a family member, talk to your friend, wait till your spouse gets home. Figure out if this is a contract you really want to sign, because if this is a reputable business, they're going to be okay if you call them the next day, the next week, and you want their services. So don't be afraid to take your time and read, because we're often seeing these contracts, they're now being presented in an electronic form. They're on a tablet, they're on a cell phone, and it may feel, oh, I'm just clicking an X, I'm clicking this button. This isn't a legally binding contract, but those electronic signatures are absolutely legal and they're absolutely binding, and you need to make sure you understand what you're signing.
That is some good advice. And Adam, I see that all the time. So many people just sign right there on the dotted line without actually reading everything through. And once you sign, I mean, from a perspective with you, I guess when it comes to legal advice, once you sign a contract, I mean, you're kind of bound to it.
You are bound, and you should go in expecting that's the case. Just because under the law there's exceptions and exceptions to the exceptions, I think consumers should anticipate, when I click that button, when I sign that piece of paper, I'm bound. And so again, the best prevention you can do is take a step back, let's think this through, let's talk to someone else and get their opinion, because you can head off problems down the line.
Right. I want to ask you another question. This is another question I get a lot. In fact, someone asked me on Instagram if I would ask this question to you today. A lot of people who they go out, get a new or used car. They think everything looks great. They got a great deal. They get the car and then they drive it home. And either that day or the next day, everything just starts failing on it. And they're like, what did I just buy? So what if you buy a car from a dealer and the next day it breaks down? What are your rights, Adam?
Right. So this is just like you. It's a question I get almost weekly. So number one, what you need to know is, again, if the car has mechanical issues, that does not necessarily excuse your obligation to pay as a consumer. So I would be very careful if I was a consumer thinking I don't need to make my next car payment, or my house was damaged by a tree falling on it, I don't need to make my next mortgage payment. That's not generally the case. So the mechanical condition of the car, especially if it's a used car, does not excuse your obligation to pay. So number one, you have these issues, you want to notify the dealership right away. You want to request copies of any warranties that you purchased as part of that deal. And oftentimes consumers may or may not know if they have a warranty or what exactly that warranty says. So they will want to refer to the contract that they signed. It's often called a risk or a retail installment contract. And there's usually a little line on there that will talk about warranties that may have been purchased as part of the deal. And if you see there's a dollar figure in there, $300, $400, sometimes thousands of dollars for these warranties, you want to request a copy of that warranty document so you can see if what your issue is covered or not. So those are two practical tips that I can give, but I will say particularly with used cars, particularly if it is a smaller dealership. Oftentimes those sale packages will have a disclosure in there that says you are purchasing this car as is, and that means with all faults. It does not mean that a dealer can lie to you or misrepresent the condition of the vehicle, okay? So if that happens, you may still have legal recourse. But if you just didn't do your due diligence, and there's something wrong with that car that you didn't catch, and you buy that car as is, there may be very little recourse. So another tip that I would give, before you sign on that dotted line, see if that dealer will let you take it to a mechanic you trust. Have that car inspected. Pay the $150 for a multi-point inspection, because this is an investment you're making. You're going to be relying on this vehicle to get to work, to get to family gatherings. And if you're going to spend that kind of money, it's worth a little bit of investment to have that car looked at by an independent mechanic.
I agree 100%. That's something I always do in my personal life. If I'm buying a used car, for sure, I always have it inspected by someone else before I buy it. Adam, some great advice from you. We're about to wrap up in a few minutes. Anything else that you would like to add, or anything else you would like for our viewers to know?
Here's one thing that I confront often with seniors, or really with anybody that's having a legal issue. Don't feel ashamed. If you think you've been scammed or you've been ripped off, you're getting notices in the mail saying you owe money, you're confused, don't be too ashamed to go talk to a lawyer, talk to a trusted family member, to talk to the deacon or pastor of your church. You really need to reach out to help. You're not in this alone. And again, particularly with my senior citizens, they feel I'm stupid. I got tricked into this. Now I don't know how to get out. I'm going to try and hide this from the rest of the family. And I think that the head in the sand approach, that is absolutely the worst one to take, because the law, for better or worse, it limits the time you have to maybe sue somebody or take legal action. So that would be another tip I would give. Talk to someone, go see an attorney. If you can't afford an attorney, try to find a legal aid organization in your county, in your city, get an appointment with them. Even if we can't take your case, we'll at least be able to give you a consultation more than likely, and talk you through what your options are.
All right, Adam, you have given some excellent advice today. We appreciate it. Adam Thoresen with Jack's Legal Aid. We hope to have Adam back in the future to answer some of your questions and just to kind of tell us what's happening out there in the community and any advice that he may have. Remember, if you have a problem that you just can't solve, you can always email me at askanthony@firstcoastnews.com.